The music was loud enough to drown out regret. Laughter spilled into the street. Red cups tipped, doors slammed, and somewhere between the flashing lights and the cheap perfume, a lie was born that would later unravel a life. By sunrise, one person would be dead. By nightfall, a camera would quietly record the truth everyone else missed. This wasn't just a party that went wrong. This was the moment a mask slipped, caught not by police, not by witnesses, but by an unblinking eye that never sleeps. And in small American towns, parties are rituals. They're how youth pretends it's immortal, how danger dresses itself as freedom. On this night, the house was crowded, hot with bodies and alcohol, walls sweating with bass and bravado. Friends remember shouting. Someone remembers crying in the bathroom. Someone else remembers leaving early, uneasy, like the air had changed. But memory is a fragile thing, and trauma edits it without permission. And what we know for certain is this: just after midnight, an argument broke out. Voices sharpened. A drink was thrown, and one person walked away angry, humiliated, and watched by a lens mounted high in the corner of the living room, its red light glowing like a pupil dilated in the dark. It saw the pacing, the clenched jaw, the moment the hand stopped shaking, and when the body was found hours later, the town reached for familiar explanations: accident, overdose, wrong place, wrong time, the kind of tragedy that lets everyone sleep again. But investigators didn't sleep. They watched, they rewound, they slowed the footage frame by frame, and in those silent seconds, a story emerged that no one wanted to tell. And because the suspect didn't just lie, they performed innocence, and the camera remembered everything they forgot. And when the police arrived, the house smelled like bleach and stale beer. Someone had already tried to erase the night. Cups in the trash, towels soaked and hidden, music playlists deleted. What remained were fragments, half-remembered timelines, trembling statements, and a neighborhood suddenly desperate to believe this was all a misunderstanding. Everyone agreed on one thing: no one saw anything, and the suspect sat on the couch during questioning, shoulders slumped, eyes wide in practiced disbelief. They spoke softly, almost politely, said they'd been drunk, said they'd left early, said they barely remembered the argument, if it even happened at all. In America, we are trained to trust calm voices, to mistake composure for truth. And for a moment, it worked. But cameras don't respond to charm. They don't flinch at eye contact. They don't forget. And a detective noticed something small, almost nothing. In the footage after the argument, the suspect didn't leave when they said they did. They lingered. 10 minutes. Then 20. They paced in and out of rooms, circling the hallway like a thought they couldn't escape. At one point, they stopped directly beneath the camera and looked up. Not by accident. Deliberately. As if checking whether the eye was still open. And later, during the interview, that same moment was denied. "I don't remember that," they said. But the body language betrayed them. The swallowing, the tightening of the mouth when the footage was mentioned. Psychologists call it leakage, the truth seeping out through cracks the mind can't seal. And friends were re-interviewed. Stories changed. Alibis shifted. One witness admitted they heard footsteps after the music stopped. Another remembered a door opening that shouldn't have. The timeline collapsed in on itself, and at the center was the suspect, pinned not by accusation but by their own movements. And this is how modern crimes are solved. Not with confessions, but with contradictions. Not with witnesses, but with machines that outlive memory. The suspect had lied to survive the night. The camera waited patiently to correct them, and the autopsy told a quieter story than the rumors. No dramatic wounds, no cinematic violence. Just bruising in places meant to be hidden, pressure where hands don't belong. The kind of marks that speak softly because they don't need to shout. Death wasn't instant. It took minutes. Long enough for someone to change their mind. Long enough for fear to turn into resolve. And investigators returned to the footage with new eyes. They traced the suspect's path through the house again, this time matching it to the injuries. The hallway, the back room, a space off camera where the light didn't reach. The absence of footage became its own evidence. Silence in these cases is never empty. And what followed was the most disturbing discovery. After the moment the victim disappeared from view, the suspect re-entered the living room alone. Their posture was different, shoulders squared, breathing steady. They went straight to the sink and washed their hands. Not hurried, not frantic, methodical, as if following a routine learned long before that night. And when confronted with this detail, the suspect smiled, a small smile. "Barely there. I wash my hands a lot," they said. It sounded harmless, normal. But humans don't scrub guilt away unless they feel it clinging to their skin, and digital forensics filled in what memory refused to hold. Deleted messages were recovered, a text sent and unsent within seconds, a search history wiped clean except for one query, missed by chance. How long until someone stops breathing? Time stamped to minutes after the argument, and this wasn't rage. It was control. and the town began to fracture under the weight of this truth. Parents locked doors earlier. Friends avoided eye contact. People realized they'd shared drinks, laughter, and trust with someone capable of rehearsing a lie while standing beneath a camera. Someone who believed truth could be edited out like a bad clip, but footage doesn't forget. And the past, once seen clearly, refuses to stay buried. And by the time the arrest came, the town had already convicted itself. For not seeing, for not listening, for choosing comfort over curiosity. The suspect was taken in quietly without resistance, in the early hours when American streets feel abandoned by history. No sirens, no spectacle, just handcuffs clicking shut like the final line in a chapter no one wanted to finish. And in the interrogation room, the performance changed. Gone was the softness, gone was the confusion. What remained was irritation, the kind that surfaces when a person realizes the story they built is collapsing. Investigators didn't raise their voices, they didn't accuse. They simply played the footage again and again, slower each time, and silence filled the room. The suspect watched themselves on screen, trapped in the past, unable to interrupt it. This is the cruelty of recorded truth. It forces confrontation without dialogue. When the suspect finally spoke, it wasn't a denial. It was a complaint. "That's not how it looks," they said. A revealing sentence. Not, "That's not what happened," but, "That's not how it looks." And psychologically, this is the moment the mask cracks. The concern shifts from morality to optics, from consequence to perception. Experts would later say this was the clearest indicator of guilt. Not the footage, not the injuries, but the fear of being seen accurately. And outside, the victim's family waited. They were handed facts in measured tones, as if grief could be dosed safely. They learned how the last moments likely unfolded, where their loved one stood, how the room went quiet. Some truths don't bring closure. They only replace mystery with weight, and this case would never become a headline that lasted. No documentaries with swelling music, no books lining airport shelves, just another file sealed, another town learning too late that evil rarely announces itself. It blends in, it laughs, it drinks from the same cups, and it assumes no one is watching. And if you're still listening, you're already deeper than most people ever go. This is usually where the story becomes too heavy, where curiosity gives way to self-protection. So before we go further, ask yourself something quietly, honestly. If this was your bloodline, your friend, your family name attached to this file, what would you have done? You can tell us in the comments if you dare. Some truths only surface when spoken aloud, and because what followed the arrest wasn't justice, it was decay, and the suspect's family closed ranks immediately. Lawyers spoke before emotions did. Statements were issued that said nothing and meant less. They described the accused as troubled, as if that word could soften what hands had done. Childhood stories were offered like excuses. Good grades, a rough breakup, stress. America has always loved explanations that feel smaller than the crime itself, and meanwhile, the victim was slowly erased from conversation, their name replaced with the incident. Their life reduced to a timeline ending at a party no one should have survived. This is how communities protect themselves, not by confronting the truth, but by minimizing the wound until it feels manageable. And inside the jail, the suspect adjusted quickly. Reports noted calm behavior, good sleep, regular meals, no visible remorse. This absence is important. Guilt doesn't always scream. Sometimes it settles in and furnishes the room, and psychologists reviewing the case would later say something unsettling. The murder didn't begin at the party. It began earlier in rehearsed entitlement, in a belief that consequences were negotiable. The camera didn't create the truth, it merely interrupted it, and that is the most dangerous kind of person. The one who believes reality can be rewritten if no one objects fast enough. And the past wasn't buried because it was hidden. It was buried because it was allowed to be. And the trial came and went like a season no one wanted to remember. Fluorescent lights, hard benches, jurors who told themselves this was just another case, another stranger's tragedy. The footage was shown once, then again, each viewing quieter than the last. Not because it lost power, but because the room couldn't hold it anymore, and the defense tried to fracture time. They argued intoxication, misinterpretation, claimed the camera angle was misleading, that moments stitched together can lie. It's a familiar tactic in the modern age. Blame the machine, not the behavior. But technology doesn't invent pauses. It doesn't imagine hand-washing. It only records what passes in front of it. And when the verdict was read, there was no gasp, no outburst. Just a slow exhale, like a town releasing a breath it didn't know it was holding. Guilty. The word landed softly, but it carried years with it. Years measured not just in sentencing, but in absence. Empty chairs, unanswered phones. A future rewritten without permission, and the suspect showed little reaction. A blink, a tightened jaw, the same controlled restraint captured on camera months earlier. Some people never break, they calcify, and afterward the house was sold. Fresh paint, new locks, a listing that described open spaces, and great for entertaining, no mention of what those walls had heard. America is skilled at renovation. We sand down history until it feels safe to touch, but the footage still exists. Archived, copied, waiting. Long after names fade and neighbors move on, that silent witness remains, holding a version of the truth that cannot be bargained with. It doesn't seek justice. It doesn't seek forgiveness. It simply remembers, and then one day, when someone asks how this could happen, how a party could end in murder, the answer won't be found in rumors or excuses. It will be found in the moments everyone thought didn't matter. And years later, this case is rarely spoken about out loud, not because it was solved, but because it worked too well as a warning. It exposed something people would rather believe isn't true. That violence doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it watches. Sometimes it smiles and says it doesn't remember, and the footage still plays the same way it always has. No music, no commentary, just a person moving through a room, unaware that the future is already forming around them. Every step is ordinary, every gesture explainable, and that's what makes it unbearable. Evil didn't enter the house that night. It was already inside, wearing a familiar face, and for the victim's family, time didn't heal anything. It reorganized the pain. Holidays became quieter. Photos felt heavier. Justice, when it came, felt procedural, necessary, but incomplete. Because no sentence restores a last breath. No verdict replays a moment and lets someone choose differently. And this is the truth buried beneath American soil. We are surrounded by archives we don't know exist. Cameras, logs, records, silent witnesses collecting fragments of who we are when we think no one is watching. Most of the time, they hold nothing but boredom. And then, once in a while, they hold a reckoning, and the suspect believed memory could be bent, that people forget, that chaos erases accountability. They were right about one thing: people do forget. Towns move on. Houses are repainted. Names fade, but the past doesn't need belief to survive, and it only needs to be recorded. And then somewhere right now, another red light is blinking in the dark, waiting, watching, preserving a truth that hasn't happened yet, but will.